It was 80 years ago this week that Amelia Earhart disappeared, never to be seen again. It's one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history.
For nearly 9 decades, Amelia Earhart's disappearance has been one of history's most tantalizing mysteries. Was she lost at sea?
When she disappeared, billions of people around the world were shocked. What happened to Amelia? What happened to our heroine? Ever since then, that mystery has haunted people.
Did she crash on a remote island? The world has speculated endlessly, piecing together fragments of evidence, rumors, and photographs. Now, after 88 years, new findings suggest her Lockheed Electra may have finally been found. Buckle up, because today, a long-lost but never-forgotten final and fatal expedition might possibly be discovered. From mystery to discovery. It's been 88 years, and Amelia Earhart's disappearance has been the kind of mystery that keeps people up at night, or at least scrolling through old articles and forums late into the evening. Where did she go? Did she crash somewhere no one has ever looked? Or was it something even stranger? Countless theories have floated around, from lost at sea to forced landing on a remote island. But despite all the speculation, solid answers have always been elusive. Until now. Recent developments have put Nikumaroro Island, a tiny atoll in the Western Pacific, back in the spotlight. Researchers have identified what they're calling the Taria object, a strange shape in satellite images of the shallow lagoon that, to the trained eye, looks an awful lot like a downed aircraft. Think fuselage, tail section, the works. It's the kind of find that makes historians and aviation enthusiasts sit up and say, wait, is this really happening? What makes it even more interesting is that the same object seems to appear in aerial photographs from 1938. Grainy, black and white shots, yes, but the outline matches the shape in the recent satellite imagery almost perfectly. For decades, people have argued about what those old photos showed, but now, with modern technology enhancing and analyzing the images, the possibility that this is Earhart's Lockheed Electra is suddenly a lot more tangible. The big move comes this November. A 16-person team from Purdue University, along with the Archaeological Legacy Institute, is heading to the island to take a closer look. They're planning to use sonar, underwater scanning, and traditional archaeological techniques to check out the site. It won't be easy. Nikumaroro is remote, the lagoon is shallow but tricky, and decades of storms and coral growth mean that even if it's there, it might not be obvious. Still, the team is cautiously excited. What sets this search apart from earlier attempts is how meticulous it is. Past expeditions sometimes relied on limited equipment or pure intuition, but this one combines decades of historical research, satellite imagery, and modeling of currents and tides to predict exactly where the wreckage might be. It's a smart mix of old-school detective work and high-tech science, and that's what makes the possibility of success feel real. Even before the expedition sets foot on the island, the discovery has sparked worldwide curiosity. Just imagine it. A plane sitting in a remote lagoon, untouched for nearly 9 decades. It's the stuff of dreams for aviation buffs and history nerds alike. People are already buzzing about what might be recovered. Personal artifacts, pieces of the plane, maybe even clues about those final mysterious hours of her flight. Of course, experts are keeping things cautious. Until the team actually examines the site, no one is claiming a definitive win. The object could turn out to be something else entirely, a remnant of some unrelated crash, or just a trick of sand and coral. But even as a possibility, it's enough to make the imagination soar. After all, it's not every day that a decades-old mystery suddenly feels within reach of being solved. Earhart's flight has been a puzzle in the history books, but now, technology, careful research, and a dash of luck might finally allow us to peek behind the curtain. The question is no longer just where she went. It's what we'll discover when we get there. But first, how exactly do you go about finding a plane that vanished nearly 90 years ago in the middle of the Pacific? The hunt for the Electra. It's a mix of modern technology, old-fashioned detective work, and a little bit of patience, plus an understanding that nature doesn't exactly make things easy. The team heading to Nikumaroro Island is bringing a whole arsenal of tools. Sonar mapping is a big part of it. They can scan the lagoon floor to pick up shapes that might otherwise be invisible. Then there's underwater photography and remote-operated vehicles, ROVs, to get close without disturbing fragile debris. On land, archaeologists are ready to examine the shoreline for any signs that might have washed up or been left behind decades ago. Every detail matters. A piece of metal, a fragment of rubber, even the faint impression of a tire track in the sand could tell a story. But it's not just tech for tech's sake. The team has spent years studying old maps, aerial photographs, and even eyewitness accounts from island inhabitants. They've modeled ocean currents to understand where debris could have drifted and checked weather records to figure out how storms might have altered the terrain. It's detective work with a scientific twist, a combination of probability, history, and careful observation. What makes this hunt especially exciting is how technology allows researchers to cross-check decades of speculation. For example, satellite imagery can now be compared with historical photos from the 30s, highlighting anomalies that may have been overlooked by previous expeditions. Even small details, like the shape of a lagoon bed or the alignment of coral formations, can help point the team in the right direction. It's like putting together a 3D puzzle that's been sitting incomplete for nearly a century. Of course, the search isn't without its challenges. Nikumaroro is remote, the terrain is tricky, and decades of natural change have likely shifted or hidden anything that might have survived. Marine life, sand, and coral growth all conspire to obscure evidence. That's why patience and meticulous planning are key. Every dive, scan, and measurement has to be precise. Even the smallest miscalculation could mean missing a crucial piece of history. Despite the hurdles, the hunt is thrilling. It's part science experiment, part adventure story, and part historical quest. The researchers aren't just looking for a plane, they're piecing together a puzzle that tells the story of a remarkable woman and her final flight. And with the combination of modern technology, historical knowledge, and careful fieldwork, there's real hope that the mystery could finally be solved. How they're hunting for the Electra isn't just about finding metal and wires. It's about connecting the past to the present, proving that with the right tools and a little bit of luck, history can reveal its secrets. Amelia, a force, a legend. Before we get lost in the mystery of her plane, it's worth taking a moment to remember the woman herself. Amelia Earhart wasn't just a pilot. She was a trailblazer, a public figure, and, frankly, a bit of a rule breaker in the best way possible. She didn't let societal expectations define her. She soared above them, literally. Born in 1897 in Kansas, Amelia showed curiosity and determination from an early age. She loved adventure, had an unquenchable thirst for learning, and wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo. By the time she got her pilot's license in 1923, she had already demonstrated the kind of drive that would carry her into aviation history. And she wasn't just interested in flying for thrills. She wanted to push the boundaries of what women could do, proving that the cockpit wasn't just a man's domain. Her list of accomplishments reads like a highlight reel of 20th century aviation. She set records for altitude, speed, and distance, becoming the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic in 1932. She didn't stop there. Earhart also wrote books, gave lectures, and took on public roles advocating for women in aviation. She had charisma, charm, and a knack for making the technical side of flying accessible to everyday people. In many ways, she was a walking inspiration, and her fame wasn't just about headlines, it was about the doors she opened for generations to come. Even behind the accolades, Amelia had a relatable, playful side. She enjoyed jokes, teasing friends and colleagues, and had an infectious energy that made people want to follow her into the sky. She could be daring, yes, but she was also practical, careful, and smart about her flights, a combination that made her both brave and believable. She wasn't a fictional hero. She was a real person with dreams, fears, and a relentless curiosity about the world. Her time at Purdue University adds another layer to her story. As a faculty member and mentor, she helped teach young women about aviation, navigation, and the courage it takes to pursue something unconventional. That side of her, the educator, the mentor, is often overshadowed by her solo flights and record-breaking attempts, but it speaks volumes about her character. Amelia wasn't just chasing records for herself. She wanted to leave a legacy and inspire others to aim higher. And that's the key to understanding why her disappearance captivated the world. People weren't just fascinated by a missing plane. They were captivated by a woman who seemed unstoppable, someone whose spirit refused to be contained. The mystery of her flight became a reflection of her own audacity, bold, daring, and unforgettable. Earhart was more than a name in history books. She was a pioneer in every sense, fearless, playful, intelligent, and endlessly curious. The search for her plane is compelling, yes, but it's her life, her choices, and the way she challenged limits that continue to inspire people nearly a century later. But how did one of the world's most celebrated aviators vanish in plain sight? The final flight, July 2, 1937, started like any other day in Earhart's ambitious attempt to circumnavigate the globe. She and her navigator, Fred Noonan, had flown thousands of miles already, pushing the limits of both human endurance and early aviation technology. Their next stop, Howland Island, a tiny speck in the Pacific, barely large enough for a proper landing strip, but critical for refueling. As the day unfolded, things began to go wrong. Radio transmissions from Earhart were increasingly frantic and fragmented. She reported difficulty locating the island, and communication problems compounded the tension. Despite meticulous planning, factors like unpredictable winds, ocean currents, and limited navigational tools created a perfect storm of challenges. Those listening on the ground could sense the urgency in her voice, the kind of urgency that made people across continents hold their breath. When Earhart and Noonan failed to arrive at Howland, the U.S. government sprang into action. The Navy and Coast Guard launched one of the largest search operations in history up to that point, scouring thousands of square miles of open ocean. Ships and planes combed the area tirelessly, but no wreckage or definitive trace of the Electra was found. For the world, the disappearance was both shocking and mystifying. Here was a celebrated aviator, a symbol of daring and progress, seemingly erased from the skies. Media outlets of the time amplified the tension. Newspapers splashed headlines like, "Where is Amelia Earhart?" and "Vanished in the Pacific," while radio broadcasts conveyed every bit of the official search and every rumor that floated in. People across the globe speculated wildly. Had she crashed, landed on a remote island, or faced sabotage? Families, admirers, and fellow aviators waited anxiously for news that never came, the uncertainty fueling public fascination as much as it fueled fear. Behind the scenes, government officials and aviation experts debated what had gone wrong. Some pointed to navigational errors or mechanical failure. Others wondered whether the small Howland airstrip was simply too hard to find. Fred Noonan's expertise as a navigator had been unparalleled, but even the best could be challenged by the Pacific's vastness and the limits of 30s radio technology. Every clue or lack thereof was scrutinized, logged, and analyzed, but answers remained elusive. The impact of Earhart's disappearance wasn't just technical, it was deeply cultural. She represented progress, independence, and the breaking of barriers. To have such a pioneering figure vanish mid-flight captured the world's imagination and grief. The combination of heroic ambition, human vulnerability, and the vastness of nature created a story that was instantly legendary, even as people hoped, yearned, and searched for a miracle. The day of the crash was a moment of tension, uncertainty, and global attention. It marked the beginning of one of the most enduring mysteries of the 20th century, a moment where daring ambition met the unpredictable vastness of the Pacific. And the world watched, waiting, and wondering what really happened to Amelia Earhart. Back to the upcoming search, and assuming the search succeeds, will the recovered remnants be as valuable as hoped? And what secrets could they reveal? If the wreckage could talk. Let's imagine the expedition went smoothly. The team arrives at Nikumaroro, dives into the lagoon, and finally lays eyes on the long-lost Electra. What happens next? What could this wreckage actually tell us beyond the obvious, yes, this is Amelia Earhart's plane? Moment. Turns out, quite a lot. First, there's the aviation angle. The Electra wasn't just any plane. It was a customized aircraft for long-distance flights, with modifications for fuel tanks, navigation instruments, and communications gear. Examining the wreckage could give historians a better understanding of early aviation engineering, the challenges pilots faced in the 30s, and even how Earhart herself adapted the plane to suit her unique flight plans. Small details, like instrument placement, wear patterns on the controls, or damage consistent with a rough landing, could shed light on how she managed her final flight. Then there's the story of her final hours. Even a few scraps of fabric, a bent metal panel, or remnants of the cockpit could provide clues about what happened in those last moments. Did the plane land relatively intact, or was it damaged mid-flight? Could the wreckage suggest the sequence of events in her last hours, how she tried to navigate, where she might have attempted to land, and how she survived, even briefly, if she did? Each fragment could be a puzzle piece in understanding her experience. The wreckage could also reveal insights about historical methodology itself. Archaeologists and historians love to talk about provenance and evidence chains, and this is the ultimate case study. By carefully documenting, scanning, and analyzing each piece, researchers can reconstruct events that happened nearly 90 years ago. It's like time travel through science, a way to step into Earhart's world, see her tools, and understand the decisions she made. Finally, there's the human angle. Discovering artifacts connected to Earhart could bring an almost tangible connection to her story. A metal fragment, a compass casing, or even a piece of personal equipment could turn speculation into reality, bridging the gap between legend and history. Amelia's plane may have vanished, but the quest for answers never did. Thanks to Purdue University and all global efforts to find her. The search that never stopped. If you've ever wondered why Amelia Earhart's disappearance has remained such a magnetic mystery, you only need to look at the sheer number of searches and theories that have sprung up over the decades. From the moment her plane vanished in 1937, people refused to let the story fade into silence. Expeditions, speculations, and endless debates followed, and they still do today. In the years immediately after her disappearance, the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard conducted aerial and sea searches around Howland Island, where Earhart was last supposed to refuel. Despite scouring thousands of square miles, they found nothing. It was a huge effort for the time, But technology and resources were limited, and the Pacific is a vast, unforgiving ocean. Even the most careful searches could easily miss a plane lost at sea or tucked away on a remote atoll. Over time, amateur historians, aviation enthusiasts, and even curious locals started piecing together bits of evidence that didn't make sense on the official radar. Some suggested that Earhart had crash-landed on Gardner Island, now Nikumaroro, based on reports of possible plane debris, unusual artifacts, and faint eyewitness accounts. Others floated wilder theories. Maybe she had been taken prisoner, or somehow ended up somewhere entirely unexpected. While some ideas were speculative, they kept the mystery alive and inspired more organized research in later years. Then there were the clues scattered across time. Bits of metal, fragments of radios, and even pieces of shoes were analyzed repeatedly, but none could be conclusively linked to Earhart. Photographs from the 30s showing shapes in shallow lagoons or along shorelines became objects of fascination for amateur sleuths. Each new discovery, no matter how small, was examined, debated, and scrutinized. Some researchers dismissed them as coincidences. Others saw them as tantalizing hints that the mystery was solvable if only someone looked carefully enough. Advances in technology eventually changed the game. Sonar mapping, satellite imagery, and digital analysis gave modern researchers tools that previous generations couldn't dream of. Suddenly, decades-old photographs could be enhanced, underwater landscapes could be scanned, and locations could be modeled to predict where wreckage might have drifted over the years. That's how the Taria object came into focus, an anomaly that might have been invisible or at least unrecognized to earlier explorers. What's striking about all these searches is the persistence of the people behind them. Many were volunteers or academics chasing a hunch, traveling to remote islands, navigating treacherous waters, and dedicating years to a mystery that might never have been solved. The combination of obsession, curiosity, and meticulous detective work is part of what keeps Earhart's story alive. Each expedition wasn't just a hunt for a plane, it was a tribute to her courage and the human drive to uncover the unknown. Even after nearly 9 decades, the search continues with the same mix of hope, frustration, and fascination that it always has. Every clue, every new method, and every modern expedition adds another chapter to a story that has never really left the public imagination. And now, with the latest satellite findings and the upcoming on-site expedition, it feels like history is about to meet the present, and maybe, finally, answer one of the 20th century's greatest mysteries. The search for answers never ends. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.